Basically, what we are presenting today is the session that Valerie and I presented out at Dreamforce, what was it, 2 weeks ago or something like that? Our topic is tips to drive effective integration management with CloudHub 2.0. So, whoops, not on that screen, on this screen. So by way of introduction, my name is Brian Statkevicus. In addition to being a MuleSoft practice manager at Argano, I am the Denver MuleSoft Meetup group leader. I am also an ambassador, and I am pleased to be joined by Valerie. Valerie, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Super nice to meet you here. I'm a product manager from MuleSoft platform team. So CloudHub 2.0 is part of my portfolio. Really happy to spend some time talking about it here with you guys today.
Awesome. So again, this is a little bit outside the normal meetup procedure. Again, we're just basically presenting what we already did at Dreamforce. So of course, that means you get to see this slide, our favorite slide. And I'll just turn it over to Valerie and you can go ahead and kick it off.
Sounds good. All right. Forward-looking statement basically means that you should make your purchasing decisions only based on what's available commercially. Since we will be going over some roadmap, forward-looking items later in the content today. Just keep that in mind. All right, next slide. So here is just a quick recap on our deployment strategy here. I know the title today is really about how should you think about improving the efficiency of your integration efforts or projects, right? And then I believe for most of you, whether you're a MuleSoft customer or a partner in our ecosystem, really your efficiency is measured by time to value. And at MuleSoft, we believe our secret sauce to help you maximize your efficiency is by providing a turnkey platform, whether that being the CloudHub default hosted iPaaS platform, which we call CloudHub, as well as the latest addition, CloudHub 2.0, or a on-prem version of that solution, which we recommend using Runtime Fabric. That is essentially a on-prem version of the Kubernetes software that we're using under the hood in CloudHub 2.0 as well. So these two different deployment options really represent the two ends of the operating spectrum, right? Like so on CloudHub 2, you're really buying into the fully managed cloud-hosted iPaaS environment. And then in Runtime Fabric, you are trading off the simplicity and the ease of use for more control and for having your application data on-prem. So that's like how I like to think about it. There is no right or wrong way to do it, but please be aware of the trade-offs and then what that means to your efficiency and your time to value as a result. And today we'll focus on CloudHub 2.0. As I mentioned, it's the latest and greatest of our iPaaS platform. It is a evolution of the existing CloudHub legacy platform, which has been around for almost 10 years. So we decided to do a reimagine, right, of that platform, given the maturity of the technology, the latest trends, and then the customer demands, right? We pivoted the platform to a completely different abstraction that is using Kubernetes as an orchestration layer, as well as containers underneath that as the isolation, right? Versus if you're familiar with CloudHub that is using more older stick stack that's using virtual machines. So some of the immediate benefits of that is that it is a much lighter weight isolation, and then also give us more flexibility to tune the application resource profile on your behalf. Some other immediate benefits include ease of use, right? Like we actually encapsulated some other infrastructure setup, such as DLBs, VPN, provisioning into the same UI-driven workflow. So the joke is that now you don't have to have a PhD in networking to set up your private space, which is equivalent of a VPC in CloudHub 2.0. And then for the enterprise security-minded customer, we also have a host of new innovations in CloudHub 2.0 that allow you to control your security better. That includes some of the highly demanded, right, feature around egress control. And then and we also have more innovations on the way along that same vein that will give your integration team more control, while also allowing the central IT team maintain that governance and the security posture that is best practice for enterprise customers. All right, so next I will go into some of the roadmap items. There are lots of things already GA that you can read in the documentation, but due to the architecture, right, and then the great foundation we're setting up in CloudHub 2.0, we are also unlocking a much higher velocity at releasing new features for the next 6 to 12 months. So this is a sneak peek of what that entails. We already GA'd this past couple of months non-HTTP protocol support, and then that is mostly to support use case such as SL7, right, in the healthcare sector. That is a very important protocol to support, and we now have that natively supported within the CloudHub 2.0 private space versus in CloudHub. You have to talk to a VM directly, right, and then provision a separate DLB to be able to do the failover, load balancing, etc. Another one that's coming around the egress control and very enterprise friendly is a domain name based egress control, meaning that in addition to IP and port, now you can also whitelist certain SaaS domains to control your application's outbound traffic. And then this is actually, the granularity is actually set at the application level. So you can have application level outbound egress control, and that you can whitelist popular SaaS applications such as Salesforce.com, right, Workday.com, etc., to really simplify that setup. And some other really highly anticipated feature, right, which is also the strength of using a orchestration platform such as Kubernetes, is to unlock the power of auto scaling and elastic provisioning. Right, so this is essential to enterprise workloads that might have peak traffic based on season, timing of the day, etc. It adds into the resiliency of your application, and then the elasticity, right, of your integration services. Last but not least, I know some of you are coming actually from existing CloudHub, right? We do recognize that the majority of the customer on CloudHub 2 will actually be from existing CloudHub users, in addition to any greenfield new customer that we're picking up. So we are having those needs in mind by incrementally releasing some upgrade tooling to help you smoothly transition seamlessly, right, from VPC to a private space. And what that entails, right, from the initial phase could just be we allow you to reuse the existing VPC you set up. That means preserve the same CIDR block as well as firewall rule setup, right, so that you don't have to go back to your central IT team, request a new CIDR block, which can be expensive, and also have to go through that whole configuration for the VPC itself. So some of those will be streamlined and simplified for you if you're coming directly from CloudHub 1. And more to that, right? Like I think today, the rest of the session, I'm actually gonna hand it back to Brian to talk about what that entails, right? Coming from the CloudHub 1 mindset. What does it mean for you practically to be able to do this transition seamlessly, efficiently, so that you can take advantage of the CloudHub 2.0 platform as soon as you can? All right, back to you, Brian.
Sure. And before I start, I do have a question for you, Valerie. It says auto scaling and elastic provisioning. It says GA November 2024. Is that correct, or is that a typo on that tentative GA date?
Yeah, so that is actually a typo. So yeah, so great call out. I was gonna say we're not November yet. We haven't made mistake on the months there, but 2024 does sound very far out.
Okay.
Let me change it in the source.
Okay.
So
yeah, somebody pointed out to me, like, I think that's a typo, but okay, I missed it. I missed it at Dreamforce too.
Did we reuse that at Dreamforce? Oh,
this is the same. This is the same deck.
It's actually there to check if you guys read the dates at all.
That is it. Yeah. And nobody asked any questions when we were there. All right. So as Valerie mentioned, I'm going to talk about the journey from CloudHub 1 to 2, or if you're a net new customer. So the first thing you need to consider is, what is your MuleSoft subscription? There are newer customers, especially in the SMB space, that may be using an integration starter SKU. There's also an integration advanced SKU, or some of you may be just dabbling in automation. Be aware that the automation SKU and the integration starter SKUs have a lot less capabilities as far as the platform is concerned, so you can't take advantage of all the CloudHub 2.0 niceties. I learned this the hard way because we're currently doing an automation implementation. We do have a system API deployed to CloudHub 2.0, but we only have one business group. We can't take advantage of clustering. We're limited to one API that we can manage using UAPIM. As you can see, there's a few other restrictions on both the automation SKU and the integration starter SKU. If you have what I call the classic vCore based subscription, so you have like a 2x4 or whatever, or if you buy the integration advanced subscription, you do have all of the CloudHub 2.0 features available to you. More in one business group, you can do clustering, you have much more APIs you can manage, and I've listed the private spaces, VPNs, etc. There is a question. The custom notification alerts of CloudHub 1 is returning to CloudHub 2. Is it? I know the CloudHub connector is being supported, so that's going to be a question for Valerie. The roadmap slide said that the CloudHub connector, and let me go back, is going to, or custom notification support is available in 2020, sometime in 2024. It says January here. That is what that means, right? So it's basically a question in the chat. You're on mute.
Yes, yeah. So the custom notification support is coming out by the end of the Salesforce fiscal year, I'm hoping. And the demand for that use case is very well understood, but we're not going to be use the same CloudHub connector architecture for it, right? Given that we have a new platform, so we're redesigning that with best practice building.
Okay, so you're basically going to be you're not going to be using CloudHub connector, but you are going to support custom alerts in some way. That's what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Good. Hopefully that answered your questions. I can't say his name, unfortunately. I know he's joining us from India. Okay, so now I've told you what to think about when you adopt CloudHub 2.0. What hasn't changed? Most access management hasn't changed. I did highlight here business groups and identity providers, again, based on your subscription. If you have the integration starter or the automation SKU, you only have one business group and you can't use an external identity provider. If you have advanced, or if you're a legacy vCore customer, everything is still the same. Again, the local development experience hasn't changed, except of course you can't use the CloudHub connector. Universal API management works the same regardless of if you're deployed to CloudHub 1 or CloudHub 2. Just make sure you point to your CloudHub 2 applications. So that hasn't changed. What has changed? Well, let's start with CI/CD. CloudHub 2.0 currently uses Maven plugin 3.8.1. If you've adopted the use of safely hidden properties in CloudHub as opposed to secure properties, instead of listing those safely hidden properties in your mule-artifacts JSON file, you now put the keys for those values into your POM file. There is a new XML element called CloudHub 2 deployment that you need to put into your configuration file. It is well documented on the various settings you have in CloudHub 2 deployment. I won't go into those. docs.mulesoft.com covers that quite well. Especially if you're using a shared space. When you first deploy an application, it's going to generate a unique ID, which is the blue arrow, and a shard. The shard is common to your space. However, we've also observed that it could add a -1 or -2 to it. We don't really know. We haven't yet really figured out why it adds a -1 or -2, but it does do that. Your unique ID, again, is going to be common to your environment. So if you're using a shared space, you do have to think about your deployment order. Put your system APIs in first, then deploy your process APIs, of course, configure to talk to the right system APIs, and finally your experience APIs. So just do keep that in mind. My next discussion point is on log forwarding and monitoring. The good news is with CloudHub 2.0, log forwarding is automatically supported. You don't have to create a support case. You just make the changes in your log4j2.xml file and it's done. Alerts are significantly different in CloudHub 2.0. We've already talked about the custom alerts. That's coming. Runtime manager alerts are literally limited to deployment failed or deployment success. If you're using runtime manager alerts, you will have to start using anypoint monitoring alerts. So in some aspects, one way it's good. You just pretty much go to one place to set up your alerts. So just be aware of that. If you are using custom alerts, again, those aren't currently supported. What we're doing at our customers is we're creating a system API, especially for business or connectivity notifications. You know, if I can't talk to Salesforce, well, I want to be alerted to that. I can't use a custom alert, so I'm going to use a system API to send out a notification to some sort of channel. As Valerie mentioned, they've migrated from dedicated load balancers to private spaces. This is a screenshot of a private space that was set up at one of our customers. We basically took the default firewall rules, so we didn't have to set up any other connections. If you do have different firewall rules set up, you'd have to set up some connections. You can't directly assign a stack IP to a specific Mule app. You could use a gateway for that. When you do spin up a private space, it does take about 30 minutes for it to be provisioned. Valerie, do you see the question from Yusuf in the chat? So that's a roadmap feature about the, looks like the Automate's private space upgrade.
Do you want me to address that now?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, because it's kind of, you know, it makes sense to do it now. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be automated, but in a user triggered way, right? So we wouldn't be doing that for you. So there will be, you know, like the current vision for that again, right? This is not released yet. The current vision for that is to have a guided workflow where you can create a private space inside your existing VPC. Would that also so that wouldn't migrate the apps for you, right? So what would happen is that you can tune your CI/CD pipeline, for example, to deploy the same application into the newly created CloudHub 2.0 and then perform the traffic switchover. So we have a couple of thoughts on how do we maintain ideally both your CloudHub 1 and CloudHub 2 traffic at the same time. But I think in most of the scenario that this is a great talking point where you can give me some validation around, right? We assume that majority of customers do not want to pay twice, so that they most likely wouldn't want to have a running app in both CloudHub 1 and 2. We assume that they will want to switch the traffic as soon as possible. But then if you switch traffic, right, that will impact all your applications in that VPC. So would the blast radius be too big for you, right, in that case? So that's something that we're still investigating, and in some area that we would love to have some input from you know, partners or customer representatives like you to let us know. Would you prefer a app by application migration, or do you want to do the whole environment switch like over a maintenance window, that kind of thing?
So again, Yusuf, thanks for the question. Valerie's email was at the beginning of this presentation. It's valerie.lee@salesforce.com. Feel free to send.
Oh yeah, I'll type my email address. And yes. I think I'm on the, the Slack channel for the community as well. MuleSoft
yeah, these people may not be part of the community.
Okay.
That's the difference. Yeah, this is open to the public.
Yeah. All right, sounds good.
Another question. Also licensing as they use their VPCs. Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, if you have a VPC in CloudHub 1, if you use them both and you want to switch to CloudHub 2.0, you have a licensing challenge there.
Yeah, so the licensing challenge, I've seen some customer manage to get around by just requesting a temporary license from their account team. And given that this is for migration use case, and then the temporary license has a timeline, right? So it was usually, I think, 3 months, so that can usually be granted pretty easily.
That's an excellent point. If you're during this migration, yep, okay, you already commented on that. Yep, contact your friendly neighborhood MuleSoft AE. In most cases, they should be able to provide some sort of solution that will work. Great questions. Okay, so other items of interest, as I mentioned earlier, CloudHub 2.0 does support clustering. You do obviously have to have 2 or more replicas when you deploy in order for clustering to work. CloudHub 2.0 does support the concept of bursting. If you create a replica less than 1 vCore, you have the possibility, again, emphasis on the word possibility, if you temporarily need higher CPU speeds, it could burst to support that. Again, it's not guaranteed to occur, and it's designed for replicas less than 1 vCore. If you create a replica of 1 vCore or more, you already are pretty performant, so bursting will not apply there. Finally, if you use VM queues, be aware VM queues in CloudHub 2.0 are not persistent, so use Anypoint MQ or some other third-party queuing system if you don't use Anypoint MQ. So I've covered CI/CD, I've covered logging, I've covered alerts, I've briefly covered private spaces, and here's a few other items of interest. So then the last part is rumors and facts about CloudHub 2.0. It's not ready for prime time. That is a rumor. The fact is that unless you need something that isn't supported in 2.0, start using it today. Our new customers, we're all adopting CloudHub 2.0 with one little asterisk, and I'll get to that. I'm actually currently working at a large public sector customer that's moving from RTF 1.x over to CloudHub 2.0 right now. So obviously there's confidence in CloudHub 2.0 to make that big of a step. And we're currently working on that using a lot of the tips and tricks that I've already presented in this session. CloudHub Connector isn't supported. That is true. Valerie mentioned it is on the roadmap to support custom alerts through some other mechanism early next year. Partner Manager is not supported. That is true. Partner Manager is coming out on RTF 2.x. I think Q4, calendar year Q4 is what I was told. I also met one of the product managers for Partner Manager. It is on the roadmap to be supported in 2.0, CloudHub 2.0, first half of next year, again, subject to the safe harbor statement. They're not simultaneously supported for one MuleSoft subscription. That's false. You can use both. Again, we've pointed out about VPCs. You do have to just watch your usage based on the subscription. And then finally, is it difficult to migrate? There's definitely some thought that has to go into it, but I think we've covered a lot of the tips and tricks that you need to do in order to migrate from 1.0 to 2.0. So again, if you're a net new customer or just adopting MuleSoft, start using 2.0 today. If you're on CloudHub 1.0, as Valerie said, it's mostly going into maintenance mode. I mean, they're not going to take it away, but you definitely do want to start planning your migration on CloudHub 2.0. There's some nice roadmap features that will facilitate that migration. It still is a little bit invasive when it comes to the code, but like anything else, with some planning, you can have a successful migration. And with that, I'm going to turn it back, I think, to Valerie for some call to actions. Obviously, they can't check out the demo.
Right. But we do have a blog post on the exact same content. I don't know if any of you have seen that yet. If not, we'll post that in the chat here. It is, if you just literally Google MuleSoft CloudHub 2.0 disaster recovery, it should be one of the first medium.com blog article that came up. So that was essentially the demo we did. Yeah, some call to actions here. Nothing we haven't covered already. If you're new to MuleSoft, obviously getting onto CloudHub 2.0 will be the wise move, right? Because then that will remove any future need for you to have to think about upgrade or migration from CloudHub 1 to CloudHub 2.0, since CloudHub 1 is currently in maintenance mode. That there will be no new investment being made in that platform, which we now consider legacy. So if you are a existing MuleSoft customer, we're not turning off CloudHub 1.0 for you anytime soon. Right? Worry about that happening literally next month or anything. So you do have a pretty long runway, but it is in your best interest to be able to start the migration and plan that out, right? Since it will take some time and planning, it will be in your best interest to consider doing a POC or start planning out the migration as early as possible, since you will be able to take advantage of the many benefits and new features that are constantly being rolled out on CloudHub 2.0. And as Brian have demonstrated, it might not be as hard as you think, right? And then I have been seeing successful reports from the field on customer being able to do the migration themselves, right? Like the common strategy, as I mentioned, is to just make changes to the deployment pipeline and deploy the same application into the newly created CloudHub 2.0 private space. And then once the deployment is done, right, and then making sure that there are no other application related regression you will have, right? For example, if you are using OSV 1, that's not supported in CloudHub 2.0, right? You have to switch to OSV 2. There is also no support for persistent queue. You have to switch to MQ, right? Like things like that, which is also, everything is disclosed in the CloudHub limitation page for CloudHub 1 customer in the MuleSoft documentation. So once you go through that list, making sure your application will function exactly as before, then all you need to do is to just perform the DNS change, right? To point the CNAME to the new CloudHub 2.0 domain that's associated with the CloudHub 2.0 ingress. That's pretty much it. And that's what I've seen some customer have performed. But the result of that is that will switch traffic for all your applications in that environment. So meaning that if you have 5, 10, 20 apps, right, and then you move all of them in CloudHub 2.0, once you switch that traffic, then all of those applications will technically now be migrated into CloudHub 2.0. So I think for any of the app-related configuration changes, that's the part that probably need the most investigation to understand. So that's If we have time, are we running out of time already?
We have 2 more questions. I think we have time to fit those in.
So I'll go over them quickly. So the VPC peering. So for the first part, right, like you don't need VPC peering for the upgrade. So VPC to private space upgrade is actually done by us, right? So you actually will just essentially have a new private space inside the same VPC. However, they're not necessarily aware of each other, right? So there is no inherent connectivity between them other than the fact that you're using the same VPC, right? So any networking will have to be done accordingly to that architecture. And then VPC peering is not planned right now for CloudHub 2.0 private space either, right? Like the recommended approach for CloudHub 2.0 remains to be transit gateway, which is a self-serve model that will reduce your reliance on our support and then also reduce any error that might happen from our support configure on your behalf in your VPC, which is the case today in CloudHub, existing legacy CloudHub, right? If you need direct connect, VPC peering, all of those actually require our support people hands-on keyboard for you in your environment. And that's deemed unsecure, right, for a lot of enterprise customer. So we are looking into some alternative for potentially supporting direct connecting CloudHub 2.0, given that not every single customer can provision AWS account and then having a TGW in their AWS account. So that part is to be TBD, right? We are trying to figure out how can we potentially also create a self-serve model for direct connect and needs as such, but as of today, that doesn't exist.
Great. Are there any more questions to go into chat? I'll give about a few seconds for that. Otherwise, again, thank you very much for everybody attending today. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Valerie, for making yourself available today. I really appreciate it.